the Supreme Court justices that we have all now seen documented evidence that they are essentially the sugar babies of billionaires shouldn't be, making these types of decisions. Welcome back to Wine and Chill. I'm Stephanie, your favorite recovering lawyer, and every month, once a month, we discuss how much I've paid towards my six-figure student loans and what's going on with student loan forgiveness. So today is the dreaded day that we all knew was coming, but we're hoping might have a different decision, but as we've discussed ad nauseum, I wasn't that hopeful for, which is the Supreme Court finally and officially and unfortunately, and to be honest, with a dubious legal opinion, struck down student loan forgiveness under the HEROES Act. So we're going to go through that. Our agenda for today is specifically going to be what I paid in June. If you're new to this series, everything is always retroactive in terms of payments, so it's going to be what I paid the month prior. Then we're going to go on to what you're here for, which is SCOTUS and student loans, and what exactly is in that pesky opinion. And then what I think, maybe more importantly now, since we are the only ones stuck with the bill, what is Joseph's new plan? So we're going to get into that. And truthfully, because this is probably one of the more stressful ones, seeing as they issued the opinion on Friday, June 30th, and today is July 3rd, Monday, I feel like I should have brought the bottle of rosé in here, but that's all right. All right, so what I paid in June. If you are new to this series, I started paying off my student loans finally in 2020, and my starting balance was at that time $304,680 and 17 trifling cents. And because it matters now more than ever since we're going back into repayment, and I cannot stress enough times and enough videos, please calculate your daily student loan interest. That amount was inclusive of $75,000 of predatory interest, aka money I did not borrow. And one of the things I realized in the past 3.5 years I've been paying off my student loans, that $304,680 and 17 trifling cents apparently wasn't inclusive of all of the interest. Yeah. It hurts sometimes, In June, I finally, on a brighter note from my end, to be honest, finally made it back to a little bit of a bigger payment, and I paid $1,000. So in 2 days, on July 5th, it will officially be 1 full year of content creation as my full-time job, and this entire year, I have been paying smaller payments of $500. In this economy, it's been a little rough. So I was very happy to finally, make a bigger payment, get a little bit more of the principal knocked out, and hopefully, start a new trend for myself where I'm working my way back to those larger payments of $4 or $5 grand that I used to pay. So that leaves my remainder in July at $162,273 and 97 trifling cents. And my estimated total paid so far in 3.5 years has been $153,794 and 63 trifling cents. Honestly and truly, we get to the mushy-gushy feeling part at the end of how am I feeling? How are y'all feeling? And honestly, maybe because of the Supreme Court decision, even though I did not qualify for student loan forgiveness, I'm feeling a little perturbed, a little bit of annoyance. Because $153 grand to pay off in 3 years is more than most people ever pay off. And the fact that only half of that went to the principal, in the words of Spice, I feel away.
I feel away.
All right, why you're here, the big important part. SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States of this here America, came down on June 30th, a holiday weekend, with their expected yet unfortunate opinion that they were striking down student loan forgiveness under the HEROES Act. Emphasis on under the HEROES Act. The Secretary of Education, specifically the Education Department, was seeking student loan forgiveness of $10,000 and $20,000 respectively for student loan borrowers that made less than $125,000 a year. Adjusted gross income, which is why I didn't qualify. Because as a tech attorney, I did make a cute coin. I did. They struck that down under the HEROES Act, so the reason why I'm emphasizing under the HEROES Act is because just because it was struck down under the HEROES Act doesn't mean that student loan forgiveness cannot move forward under another act. However, I would say it's dubious. It's unlikely. It's giving hopes and prayers. truthfully. I'm just going to put that out there before we get into the Biden administration's alternative plan. And with that, we did a full live stream back in March of the oral arguments regarding the two cases, which I'll put on the screen the people you can thank as to why student loan forgiveness is not moving forward. And the dark money behind them, truthfully, if we're being honest. I hope they got a cute coin for doing foolishness with themselves. In March, when we did the live stream, we went through exactly what the HEROES Act is, what was being argued, specifically in both cases. So if you want a rundown of that, you can go ahead and head over to that live stream. Essentially, from the opinion, the most important takeaway is, of course, that student loan forgiveness has been struck down for millions of borrowers. I believe about 40 million borrowers. The second most important takeaway is that our Supreme Court has decided to live a different life. And the word of the day is overreach. From a legal standpoint, Secretary Cardona of the Department of Education was legally allowed to issue student loan forgiveness under the HEROES Act. It was not illegal. You can ask many legal scholars, myself included, about that, as well as the fact that this shouldn't have even been a legal question. It should be noted that the expansion of the major questions doctrine, which is cited in the opinion by Justice Roberts, is problematic in numerous ways. And Justice Kagan, who dissented, I believe stated it best. By the way, dissenting opinion is the justices that don't agree. So this was a 9-3 opinion. So 9 of the justices agreed that yes, to hell with student loan forgiveness. And 3 of the justices were like, actually, y'all are wrong. And we knew this split was going to happen because our Supreme Court now is highly ultra-conservative. Thanks to a one Donald J. Trump, who is undergoing his own indictment. Multiple, actually. So, Justice Kagan stated it perfectly, which she stated from the first page to the last. Today's opinion departs from the demands of judicial restraint. At the behest of a party that has suffered no injury, the majority decides a contested public policy issue properly belonging to the politically accountable branches and the people they represent. AKA, this was not for SCOTUS to decide. This should have been for the executive branch, because the people elect who's in the executive branch, aka the president, or the legislative branch, Senate, House of Representatives, Congress at large. Not 9 Supreme Court justices who we, the regular degulars of America, do not have any say in appointing. We get to elect the president then picks the justices they want. Which is why, in that manner of thinking, electing the president is quite important. Because when Trump won, he got to pick 3 Supreme Court justices. Which is a large part of the reason why we're in this mess. Justice Kagan then went on to state in a very, I would say, judicious read, justices throughout history have raised the alarm when the court has overreached, when it has exceeded its proper limited role in our nation's governance. It would have been disturbing and indeed damaging if they had not. The same is true in our own day. I like the subtle shade of her saying, essentially, the Supreme Court justices that we have all now seen documented evidence that they are essentially the sugar babies of billionaires shouldn't be, making these types of decisions. And into the specifics and what we talked about in the full deep dive we did in March, Justice Kagan goes on to say, the court's first overreach in this case is deciding it at all. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, a plaintiff must have standing to challenge a government action, and that requires a personal stake, an injury in fact. We do not allow plaintiffs to bring suit just because they oppose a policy. Neither do we allow plaintiffs to rely on injuries suffered by others. One of the cruxes in this case was the fact that the state of Missouri was suing on behalf of Mohila. Mohila is a private corporation. If Mohila wanted to sue, they could have sued themselves. They did not. It is very, I would say, startling. The fact that the Supreme Court has now stated you don't have to have an actual injury to sue. You can do what you want to do. You can sue if you feel like it, if you're a state, if you think that policy is going to bother you. Generally speaking, from a very oversimplified way that the law works, you have to have suffered an injury. So for example, if I want to challenge the jaywalking law, I would have to jaywalk, get a ticket, and then challenge the law and say, hey, everyone is jaywalking. Why am I the only one that got a ticket? I can't instead say the way the jaywalking law is written, I feel like it discriminates against people that like to wear very colorful clothes and earrings. I have to actually have suffered the harm. I can't just not like the policy. Our Supreme Court has gone rogue, to be honest. All of last week raised my blood pressure. And the fact that they had the audacity to release the opinions on Thursday and Friday, respectively, of 3 major cases that are likely to affect majority, if not all of our lives, between the affirmative action case, between the LGBTQ discrimination case, and between student loans. It's been a long 4 days. 5 days? Thursday? 4 days. See? I don't know. Wine. On to something a smidge more hopeful. And honestly, that's being really generous to say it's a smidge more hopeful. Which is, what is Joseph's alternative plan? If you are keeping up with your emails and if the Department of Education actually has your correct email, full shade. Full shade to them because, child, who knows? Who knows? They need some updating. All of our government websites need a lot of updating. They sent out an email on July 1st stating that there are 3 new alternative paths that the Biden administration is seeking in order to provide some level of forgiveness. Now, the HEROES Act, oversimplification of the HEROES Act, stated that under a national emergency, the executive branch could suspend certain payments and issue certain relief. That's a huge oversimplification. Essentially, that's what was used as the premise for student loan forgiveness under the HEROES Act, and the national emergency was the pandemic. Okay, so we moved away from that. The Supreme Court has said, hey, these 2 lawsuits, they have standing. You can't use the HEROES Act anymore. Step number 1 for the Biden administration now is, okay, let's find a different act. It should be noted that numerous debt relief lawyers, debt relief advocates, myself included, has said this, have stated that the Higher Education Act, the HEA, would have been a better act to utilize in basing student loan forgiveness. That is now what the administration is doing. However, it is unlikely to pass. So this is from Debt Free Gonna Be, so shout out to her. She's very witty, very smart, very quick with her posts over on Instagram. I highly recommend you follow her. I mention her all the time. Very much, I would say, same day or next day coverage. So if you're waiting on me and you want a quick 90-second answer of what's going on in a reel, Nika has you. So I highly recommend you go over there. So borrowing from her Instagram post that she posted the same day, which shout out to Nika. The Higher Education Act gives the Secretary of Education the authority to compromise, waive, or release loans under certain circumstances. Now, it should be noted, essentially relying on the HEROES Act is basically a test run of what will happen if the Biden administration decides to try this again. Truthfully, unfortunately, there is going to be a public hearing, I believe, yes, is scheduled for July 18th. It's virtual, so I think we all should log in. We should all make some noise. We should all attend because we pay taxes and it is Plius. And for the majority of people, their student loans are the ones affected. If you don't qualify for student loan forgiveness by myself, you should still want other people to not have the burden of student loans. So yes, on July 18th, I think we all should attend the first hearing. This is a much longer process, relying on the Higher Education Act. However, I want to temper people's expectations. I think we will likely just see the same rigmarole that happened now, which is that the Supreme Court, in their ruling, essentially, and according to Justice Kagan herself, who sits on the Supreme Court for many, many years, has decided that overreach is the name of the game. So there's that. The second aspect of the alternative plan is there's going to be a 12-month on-ramp to repayment. We are maybe not in a recession. Depends on who you ask. In this economy, everything seems expensive to me. So let's just go with that. If everything seems expensive to you, that's where we're at. So essentially, under the 12-month on-ramp, the interest is going to start to accrue in September. That is the largest problem. However, according to the Biden administration, if you miss a payment, make a partial payment, or anything of that nature, they will not contact the credit bureau. So they will not ruin your credit and your chance at getting an overpriced apartment. But, your interest will still accrue. It's giving, the minimum. The least they could do. Small claps for that. And then last but not least, which this has changed names, and we've talked about this a few times in a few of the videos, we have the Saving and Valuable Education Save Repayment Plan. This is going to be a revamped version of Repay under income-driven repayment, which essentially, according to this plan, if your payment that you make does not cover the totality of the interest, and there's interest in that month left over in your payment. So we went through the math last video. If you want to go through how to calculate your interest payment, how all of that works, it is in last video. Highly recommend you watch it. I did math for y'all. That should show how much I care, truthfully, because math is not my ministry, but money is. So the way that's going to work is, say for example, your total payment due is $150. And that is your monthly minimum payment. You have to pay $150. Just because you have to pay $150 does not mean $150 will hit your principal. You have to calculate and see what your monthly interest rate is, how much you are accruing monthly in interest. So say for example, your monthly interest rate is actually $200. To ever hit the principal, you would have to pay $201, with $200 going towards the interest and $1 going towards your principal, right? Under the new Save plan, say you make your monthly minimum payment of $150, that entire thing should go towards interest. You should technically still owe $50 of interest, which would have then went into your total balance. Not the amount that accrues, just your total balance as it's growing for the interest. With the new Save plan, you don't owe that extra $50. However, also with the new Save plan, under that same math, you will never touch the principal amount, because you will never be able to pay the interest, which is again my largest problem with these Band-Aid plans. A plan that would work: one, my highest interest rate is, let me look at the wall, it's on here, 7.21% for my largest student loan. That is obnoxious. That is how you get $75,000 of student loan interest, aka money you do not borrow, in 5 years. It would be better if we proposed and passed a law that states student loan interest cannot be higher than 2%. Because do you know, for years and years and years, which country's student loan interest rate was never allowed to be higher than 2%? Australia. It recently changed, and now I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's hovering at 3%. Still significantly lower than 7.21. Yes. So while the Save plan helps a little bit in terms of your monthly payment is also lower, it doesn't help you in the long run, which is the long run is you don't want any damn student loans. And with that, we're finally to the point where I've been hinting at it, I would say like the whole of this year, because we knew that this day was coming, that we have to now consider refinancing student loans. I've refinanced one of my student loans right before we went into student loan forbearance. My plan is, I have 3 student loans left, is to refinance them as well. So I will likely be doing that next month. So I'm going to walk all of you through that process so you can see if student loan refinancing is for you. The main pro of student loan refinancing is you lower your interest rate. So you lower your interest rate, you lower what you pay in totality of the payment. Your monthly payment, most likely, because these are private companies, will be higher than your federal payment, particularly with these new rules. However, in the long term, you pay less money. So there are pros and cons to it. We're going to go through all of that, and I'm going to discuss, why from a mathematical standpoint it makes sense, but also making a bet on myself that I'll make enough money to pay it off faster. Because I'm not. $75,000 of money I didn't borrow is already grating my nerves. It's already grating my nerves. And I don't want it to be any higher. So we will discuss that in August student loan update, and any updates that happen in terms of student loan forgiveness, since the Biden administration has stated affirmatively like, hey, we're going to try this under the Higher Education Act. So buckle up, honestly, and keep your expectations low. One of my biggest qualms with immediately on July 1st issuing like, hey, we're going to do all these things, we're still going to try to do forgiveness, blah, 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 is it comes off as a bit disingenuous, which is clearly the other branches, aka the legislative branch, particularly the parts of the branch that are controlled by Republicans, as well as the judicial branch, which is controlled by very conservative Republicans, have no interest in student loan forgiveness. Stating that we're going to try this again instead of issuing an executive order of just forgiving student loan forgiveness, which according to numerous student loan debt rights advocates, specifically the lawyers, is perfectly legal, is just giving people a false sense of hope. If the email had said, hey, on August 31st, Is there a 31st in August? If the email had said on August 27th, President Biden is just going to issue an executive order that student loan forgiveness is forgiven for just $10,000, I'd be like, yeah, that's sensible. That's hopeful. We know it's happening. Stating that we're going to have the public hearing, we're going to go through this, someone is going to challenge it in court again. We're going to go through the same steps likely again. And not to be like Debbie Downer or dismal, but as a lawyer, I think it is a little bit, it causes more consternation, in my opinion, to lead people on down this path. Truthfully. And it should be noted again that it is very legal and that President Joseph Robinette Biden does have the power, if he wanted to, put out an executive order for giving the student loans in the amounts he said it. He could. He doesn't want to. He has said numerous times that he doesn't agree with it and that he does not want to.
We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen.
So there's that. And with that, I would say my takeaway as a lawyer, as a concerned citizen, as a tax-paying citizen who pays a higher percentage of taxes than both Bezos and Cheeto, I personally, the largest takeaway and the largest alarm to this as a lawyer that keeps their eye out on what's going on is our Supreme Court is going down a path that is going to cause not only harm in the immediate, but harm that will last for decades. That will take decades to undo. So I think on the channel, because we have our student loan series that runs once a month, most of the other series are more like lawyer reacts. We go through different lawsuits, etc. I am going to do more coverage of Supreme Court cases because largely these are the cases that affect the majority of us. Versus, the pop culture cases are fun. It's spicy. We learn some things. I love going through the contracts as a transactional lawyer, particularly when they're contract based. However, these Supreme Court cases we're getting riled up for a day and then they're sliding under the rug when these largely will have the effects on not only us, but future generations. So with that, and as usual, I will keep y'all posted and up to date, and we will continue following what's going on with student loan forgiveness. All right. Oh, and I almost forgot. How are you feeling?
How you doing?
And I think the reason why I ask is because selfishly, I want to say how I'm feeling. But I think it is good. And one of the things that does give me happiness about us continuing this series is the sense of community that everyone has. And I know sometimes it's hard to talk to your family members or your friends even that don't have student loans or have, honestly come to a place where like, listen, I've gone to a place of ignoring it. Ignoring the issue doesn't make the issue go away. I'm just going to say that kindly. I mean that with the most kindness. So I want y'all to have a space to continue to discuss with each other. So it always brings me a lot of happiness seeing that y'all have community with each other and with me as well, so we can talk about it. For me, I think because I knew this was going to happen, and I said this was going to happen, and most people also, kind of resigned to the fact that unfortunately it was going to get struck down. It still stings the fact that for a year and a half now, just dangling a carrot in front of people that have a budget and that have bills and have real things to do, really irked my spirit. That part has really irked my spirit, truthfully. And I don't even qualify. So even and it's annoyed me. It annoys me when people just don't come out right and say the thing. I don't understand. The lack of confrontation irritated me. We could have done this at the beginning. I would have rather Joseph try to do the executive order in the beginning and then be like, let's see what's going to happen and see who really was going to tussle into Tuesday. Rip the Band-Aid off. So here we are with that. How are y'all feeling? How is your student loan journey going? Every video, there's always at least 1 or 2 people that have paid theirs off in that month. So that's great. So congratulations in advance to y'all that have paid your student loans off. And let me know, how does it feel? All right, on that note, I'll catch y'all next month for our student loan updates, and I will catch y'all later on this week to discuss affirmative action. Because there's lots of misinformation going on, and I love the data, the statistics, the truth of the matter. So we're gonna talk about affirmative action and why striking down affirmative action is a blow to everyone while still continuing to honor legacy admissions. Foolery abounds. Truthfully, I feel like that's what July is starting with. Foolishness. All right, on that note, I'll catch you all in the next video.